Welcome to another episode of Series C Growthonomics. Today we will continue our conversation on customer analytics. And last time we talked about acquisition and understanding how to acquire customers and understanding how to habituate your customers. Today we will talk about how do you retain your customers and how do you increase the value of your customer. So remember the example we've been following is the retailer, a men's warehouse, men's clothing retailer, and we've been talking about how 100 years ago versus now, how today today with the growth of data, we don't have that personal understanding of our customers anymore, and how you can use analytics to really build that understanding at an aggregate level. So we started with segmenting our customer into new and old. And then today we'll start looking at what do you do with old customers, how you can do two very big important things: understanding retention, and when we understand retention, it's basically the opposite of churn. How do you make sure your customers don't churn? And that means your focus is to understand what are the indicators, what happens, what series of potential events happen, event 1, event 2, event 3, that actually indicates that churn will happen, right? So this is your understanding of what are the biggest drivers of churn. Is it customers calling in to do a refund or a return and finding challenges in there? Or is it that the shipment is not received on time? Or what is it that actually gives people that pause and they say, well, I don't want to do business with this company anymore? And the flip side of that is retention. What are these things? What are these delightful experiences that your customers go through that basically have them keep coming back and again for all their suits, the need for their clothing and suits and formal wear? So this is, and then as you think about retention and churn, with a lot of our clients, the biggest problem comes when you look at retention analytics and churn analytics is the definition of what is churn. Many of our clients, why this is hard is, right, from your life cycle, understanding your customer journey, right? Your life cycle of your customer comes in, makes one purchase, first purchase, and then maybe they do their average time between their first purchase and second purchase is maybe 15 months. And maybe the second and third purchase is 24 months or whatever. In this business, I'm talking about for the men's warehouse. How can you know that the customers have churn? What is the definition of churn you will use? Is it that well, they don't return back? Even your 15 months may be a big distribution of people. Some people ordering at the second month itself, to people who are all the way not ordering for 4 years or more. So how do you really define churn? So that becomes a big huge issue about definition that you need to resolve within the organization first. How do you define churn first before you can actually do any analysis to understand what drives churn and what drives retention? So that's something to pay attention to. Obviously, there isn't a right and a wrong answer. It's basically you coming up with enough heuristical evidence to say this is the way we should lead. For example, in this organization, really waiting 15 months to know whether the person has churned or not is not a good idea. There has to be some proxies built before on that customers, that you can use to say, hey, they haven't checked their email for last 3 months. That's a churn, or that's an indication of churn, and so on. So that's one thing to pay attention to. The other thing I wanted to talk about was the key aspect of increasing value. How can you make sure your customers spend more with you? And so that's called, you can talk about in a couple of different ways. You can think about from upsell perspective. You can think about it increasing lifetime value, or even in a micro manner, you can think about increasing cart size, right? Um, and so there is a whole body of work around a concept called bundling, right? When somebody is checking out their suit that they just bought with you, can you offer a tie to go with it, and so on and so forth. So that's one concept in terms of increasing cart size, which is immediate value right away. The other concept that you need to look at is called LTV, lifetime value. How do you, first of all, measure? This is another one of them. How do you measure LTV? In this organization, maybe, for example, typically lifetime value or is defined as the customer expected customer tenure times the value that they generate monthly for you, right? And so again, there's not a right or wrong answer, but the most important part is to make sure that you are quantifying LTV by your customers early on. So right after first order, you should have some ways of building individual level lifetime value. So then you can start understanding, if somebody's lifetime value is $10 versus somebody's is $2,000, you should be able to treat them differently downstream in terms of even retaining this. It's very important to retain this. It's less important to retain this customer, right? So these are the things that you can do post doing your analysis of lifetime value. I think we'll talk more about it next time when we talk about segmentation. So, but the other part is upsell. So, how is it? What kind of things you can do to understand if, for example, we talked about between the first transaction and the second transaction, what are the things that you can do that will help you upsell along the way with a smaller purchase, or what is it that you can do at the time of checkout? We already talked about cart, that will increase the value. So these are some thoughts. I've covered a lot of ground here, but these are some thoughts for you to think about as you think about critical aspect of retaining your customers and increasing value from them. Next time we will talk about segmentation and potentially look also at LTV to understand how to look at your customers and their various use cases and build to that. See you next time.